everyone. Before we start, please, for those who are watching this via live stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, etc., please introduce yourselves, what city you're coming from, your name, and if you want to connect with other kind of like-minded executives, etc., put in your LinkedIn profile as well. We'll be showing this on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And once again, comment and participate, ask questions in our live stream, and I'll be checking the questions there too. Today's Let's Talk is on navigating pregnancy, parenting, and work with Stephanie Kramer. For those who are new to Community of Seven, there's one singular purpose of these Let's Talk calls, and it's to create an environment where you can come as authentically as you are, where you are accepted, and where you can have the conversations with other purpose-led leaders to talk about what matters most to you. For this exercise, for those who are kind of watching this via live stream, in the comments, wherever you're watching this from, I want you to kind of ask, I have a question to ask and put it in the chat right now. Have you or someone you know experienced the challenges of balancing pregnancy and work? Have you or someone you know experienced the challenges of balancing pregnancy and work? Let us know in the comments. And what were some of the challenges, or what were some of the things that were said to you, or someone you might have, you love? And you can post that in the comments, and I'll kind of read some of them later on when we get back on. So once again, I'm so excited to have Stephanie Kramer, the author of Carry Strong, An Empowered Approach to Navigating Pregnancy and Work. This book is so powerful. It's out right now. Please go buy it. And once you buy it, make sure you also leave a review, because that's how we give authors a hug. In Carry Strong, Stephanie unveils 5 potent principles designed to guide us through the transformative journey from the initial decision to become a working mom to every stage in between. Her approach goes beyond just coping, just surviving. It empowers us to be both powerful and pregnant in our professional lives. So to set the stage, let's consider some really thought-provoking statistics from Carry Strong. 92% of college women believe that motherhood will impact their careers, and 54% of people with or without children see parents as assets in the workforce. However, women can face various challenges when they are pregnant in the workforce, including discrimination, lack of accommodation, inflexible workspace, stress and mental health, lack of job security, unconscious bias, and the list goes on. So while reading Carry Strong, I really thought back to my experience giving birth to my daughter. It was the first time I had held a baby. It was the first time I changed a diaper. When I came home, I just had no clue. I had a really bad case of postpartum depression. I thought my maternity leave was 3 months. It was more like 2 months. Mm-hmm. And my job at that time took me away from home a lot. So I was traveling 80% of the time. So I was breastfeeding. I was pumping while I was away. I remember driving from Miami to Orlando. And I had the breast pump, and I was like pumping while I was driving. And this kind of battling postpartum depression. And I just also remember, prior to giving birth, I was promised this really big promotion, the promotion that I was waiting all my career, for. And I was told that after I got back from maternity leave, I would come back to this new title. Well, fast forward 2 months, management had changed their mind, and I was actually demoted. No explanation. I was just told by my manager, who was a woman, to be patient. So it's why this book is so powerful. And for the folks who are watching this right now on live stream, who've experienced similar, or who are going through their first pregnancy, Stephanie's mission is really to transform the narrative around working motherhood, turning it from a struggle to be endured into celebration, to be embraced with confidence. She understands that navigating pregnancy while working can feel like it's a tug between privacy and support. And she has a wisdom to really guide us through this journey. So we're going to really delve into Stephanie's wealth of knowledge today and glean some insights from her experience and uncover the transformative power of Carrie Strong. So without further ado, let me tag Stephanie right now. Hi, Stephanie. So
Hi.
let me introduce you. So Stephanie, I met last month at an event, and I was so impressed by her talk and her spirit and the message of Carrie Strong that I was like, we need to have her on our live stream. And this conversation needs to happen. So Stephanie Kramer is a seasoned beauty industry executive. She's currently the Chief Human Resources Officer at L'Oreal in New York City. She brings her extensive experience to bear on this topic. She is the author of Carrie Strong. Please go buy it today. She also imparts her wisdom as an adjunct professor of management communication at FIT. And she is also an industry advisory board. Her expertise has been showcased at prestigious institutions, including the Wharton School and the University of Pennsylvania and Harvard University. So, Stephanie, I know you have a PowerPoint. If you want to just kind of take it away, that would be awesome.
Sure. So I'm going to share. First of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everything that you've created with the community of 7. I think one of the principles as we talk today is about creating community and about having these conversations. And I love what you said at the very beginning, which it's authentic conversation on these topics that are not taboos, they're table stakes. This is very normal. This is something that happens every day. And instead of having it feel like we have to have something that we have to get through, it's going to continue to happen. And it can be challenges, but we can share them together. It can be also just neutral and you continue your day to day, but it also can be a boost and you can really thrive. So thank you for creating the space and the conversation. It was so awesome to meet you too. So, all right, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to give kind of a brief 15-ish minute talk, and then we're going to open it for questions. But I just want everybody to have a little bit of the baseline. It's of the book, obviously, but it's really so you have kind of a similar information, but also can think about this topic differently. So I already was introduced, but I like to say that I'm also a proud mom of 2 young sons, and that is not in order of priority. That's number 1. But I'm very driven by all of the different titles that I have, but also not held by back them. And I think that's really important for all of us that are listening to today. So, brief introduction. Everyone here, I'm sure, knows that this is an important topic, or we would be talking about it, but it's a big deal. And 85% of working women will become mothers during their careers, 35 million working mothers in the US, and 80% of millennials in just a few years will be parents. This is not a little number. This is a very big number and significant impact over time, but also right now in the moment. And when I use the term working mother, I want you to know that any of the research that I'm speaking about was used with non-gender conforming individuals, birthing people, but most likely the people that I interviewed or within even the quant data were women who identified themselves as working mothers. So that's the term they use. Even though today we don't really say working fathers, this is how people that I spoke to talked about it for themselves. So this I thought was super cool because one of the things that happened, and I'll tell you a little bit about the why of the book, but one of the things that happened in the past month, 2 months, I think, January to June 2023, this research that's here. But I saw this study, which was shocking. You see the headline, more mothers are working than ever before. And I remember during the pandemic where everyone said, will we ever recover? Will the workforce ever have working mothers rejoin? And the answer is yes, which gives us a glimmer of hope. But it also says that there are different types of work that we've now embraced. Fractional labor, we've had flexible policies that have involved people more. And there's the good and the bad of those, but we are seeing the labor force participation rate for mothers with kids under 5 continue to increase. So it's not also a topic that's going away. It just has continued over time and will continue to in the future. So let's figure out a better conversation to have about it. So a little bit about the book. So I like to say that the book's 10 years of a labor of love, but 10 years ago in 2013, I was first pregnant, then unpregnant, then pregnant again at work. And I'm sure many of you know what that says, but it's much easier for me to say out loud on a live stream or to an audience, which is pregnancy loss really rocked me personally. I didn't have that expectation that it would be something I wouldn't be able to do. You know, when you're working in your career, you put in more time and you say yes to the tough projects, or you raise your hand, you put in the extra effort in education or schooling. But you can't really do that with pregnancy. It's really tough. And all of a sudden, you have this big ambition, which in fact was something I wanted more than ever, even more than my career. But I didn't realize it until after suffering loss. But from that point, I did have my first son, William, in 2014. And then in 2015, I started teaching at FIT. I did a TED Talk about working pregnancy, public pregnancy. I had my second son also in between some lost moments. But then in 2020, something happened. And I know you all know what I'm talking about. But headlines like this occurred. So whether you just saw that one that I just shared about the increase in labor force participation, but you might have these still in your mind. Things like pandemic forces more women to leave the workforce, or every 2 months we get another article about how America's mothers are not okay and nothing happens. And I saw the picture on the right, which was an amazing emergency room nurse who I thought looked so strong in her PPE and scrubs. And I thought, there's something here, and I want to do something to help. So I started writing the research for 4 quantitative studies that would become the basis for the book. For a lot of the statistics that were just shared, like 1 out of 2 women say that trying to conceive, like I just spoke about, not yet being pregnant, had an impact on their career. But I added in voices of experts, inspirations, and icons that didn't only share their advice, but also share their own personal story. So just like we're talking about creating a community of support, creating authentic conversations, these women gave their own very personal and private stories that both grounded in the reality of what they experienced, but also are helping all of us to create empathy to empower us for the future. And the stories aren't shared so that you can judge yourself against something, but in fact, actually, so you feel less alone and more supportive of the community that we're trying to create. So, from those stories, from the research, what I heard that I just loved was this idea of who do you want to thank? So, I had a lot of statistical type questions, but the storytelling aspect, I said, tell me a story about you when you were pregnant at work, or trying to conceive, or for those people, I also interviewed, for example, college age women who didn't yet have family or were thinking about it, about what they thought the impact could be on their career. What phase did this occur? And I'll talk a little bit about the phases. But I also said, who do you want to thank? And this answer, I think, sums up this potential for this empowered approach more than anything. Who do you want to thank? Often women in hindsight are saying myself. There's a confidence that comes from something that is innately part of who we can be, but also takes so much of who we are. And that is, I think, profound and really important to celebrate, but also recognize that you need to feel empowered in order to do that. So the result of that storytelling and that research were these 5 principles, but also 5 phases. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the phases because I want to make sure we have time for the questions. But the phases are essentially stretching from, instead of just, your 40 weeks or 9 months, which is really 10 months, it's stretching it further than that because you already are having an impact, whether or not you're aware of it. So preconception, the BTTC, before trying to conceive, you might be thinking about how your career and any part of work life intersection can happen, but specifically today we're talking about pregnancy, might change, or by the way, might help you decide where you want to work in the first place. Try to conceive, then the big fat positive, or other word if you want to insert your own F word. Then the hush, private pregnancy, public pregnancy, the push. So moving from private pregnancy to public pregnancy is a huge deal around the big tell. And that's something so many women talked about. And I wanted to try to give the language to that, the language to private pregnancy and public pregnancy, not delineated by number of weeks, which is about the gestation of your baby, not necessarily about how your relationship with work or career or even just yourself and identity can occur. Then in the following phases, the later phases, it's kind of post due date. And I call it anticipating the great return or not, because we know that women are making an active choice for a lot of different reasons, for their family, for themselves. But it's anticipating. So you know things will change, and maybe based on the needs of your family or your baby or other parts of your life, but anticipating it or doing something I like to call a walkthrough, where it's like, all right, what is my day going to be like? And what systems of support do I need? What tools do I need? What conversations do I want to have? How much time do I actually need or have or want to? And that can be really freeing instead of just thinking about this one small sliver of your public pregnancy and your maternity leave. So I extended a little bit to give that support. We shared some of these statistics already, but one I want to highlight here is that 49% of women experienced a change in their self-confidence. So it wasn't just this one story insight, but it was very much felt. And on the other side, that's 1 out of 2. It's a pretty big deal. 1 out of 2 women felt comfortable transitioning for leave. And while initially I kind of thought, well, that's pretty good. 1 out of 2 felt comfortable. We know that in our places of work, if one out of 2 is not comfortable transitioning for leave, that's a pretty huge opportunity for people to better feel supported. Because if you're retaining us or individuals in that moment, it lasts. And it's also positive for the people behind them and the teams that we're creating and structures of support too. By the way, it's still valid if you're an entrepreneur, obviously, comfortable transitioning for your own leave or the way you're thinking about your way of working. So the stories also tell a dichotomy. Some people's stories include things like, what do you need from me and how can I help you succeed, when talking about how to tell your boss you're pregnant and hearing back from a boss. But also, and you can see this is an anonymous quote, I think about this interaction, how it solidified my decision to leave, how you solidified your decision to leave because of this small interaction and moment. And pregnancy and work is just one way that this happens. But these work-life moments are really, really powerful. And in fact, it's not just for you, but for all of those people around you and for what you expect in the future from an organization, a place of work, or even from yourself. The principles, there are 5 principles, and I'll highlight just a few before we get to questions. 1, perspective. Super important. Even just having this conversation today, it's so you can think about it a little bit differently than maybe just that moment in time or something to get through, but as an opportunity. Balance, deciding to have it all, not at the same time, and not alone, which I very much focus on in the book. Community, like the one that we're creating today with the conversations. Communication, the essential part of it. And then identity. Identity, the hardest chapter for me to write, is about what you kind of often lose or you find in yourself in this journey that can be really profound. Or it can feel not that much, that you're not changing and you're exactly who you are, but it feels like all the circumstances around you have changed. Perspective. More as of 2022, 47% of moms contribute more than half the household income. So there's the motherhood penalty and fatherhood bonus that is often talked about, which means that women who have children when they're working are often earning less than their male counterparts that have children. But in fact, if moms are contributing more or nearly half to their household income, then the breadwinning bonus is in fact not accurate. I'm going to just do one more example here on balance. So one of the things I like to talk about with regards to balance in the book, and might be helpful for you, whether or not you're thinking about pregnancy's behind you, or it's not even a topic, but you want to be a good community ally, is instead of striving for balance. So balance implies something that you can train for, in fact. You can make yourself stronger. You can stand on one foot, like on a New York City sidewalk today when I was changing my shoes, hustling down the street from the train. But more if you imagine a fluid approach where right now I am all in with all of you. I'm focused on what I'm doing and I'm here. I'm actually also at work. So in this moment, I can slide right back into my day at work. But when I'm at home, instead of feeling like there's this failure on the other side of those other pieces of my life, you slide back in. And it might be like that in one day, might even be like that in a week or even a month or a season, but you recognize that. So instead of striving, and in the book, actually, professional athlete Alana Myers-Taylor, she's an Olympian, actually talks about there's never a day where she's trying to strive for 33, 33, 33 as a wife, as a mother, and as an athlete. Instead, it's going to be different in different days and different moments. And personally, for me, that really has set me free. There's also an idea that I love and I did not come up with, but I really appreciate, which is instead of certainty of missing out, there's an idea of, instead of fear of missing out, there's an idea of certainty of missing out, which also can be super liberating when you think about the fact that instead of always worried about, letting a ball drop, and I'm not being the mom I want to be, or I'm not being the sister, the cousin, the aunt, the friend. There's a certainty to it. And instead, there's a certainty of the positive. And these little principles or tools are things that throughout the book, I weave in with stories and make them very relevant to pregnancy. But it also can be really helpful just in general to have a reset in how you're thinking. Think especially in today's fast-paced world and coming out of the pandemic and resetting the way we work, we've just experienced such a big shift. It can be really helpful to have these moments with yourself where you're checking in on what you really want and what you want in terms of your balance, not somebody else's balance and what's there. For communication, use basic questions. So if you want to have any challenging conversation, by the way, it can be super positive, it can be something that's difficult, but navigating them with who do you want to tell? What do you want to tell them? When and where? Is it quick? Is it urgent? Does it need to be a quick call? Is it something where you want to wait until maybe you can be in person together? Is it an email? Is it written? Those things are all tools and how you want to communicate something so big, for example, as how to tell my boss I'm pregnant, or I'm going through IVF, or I'm struggling with a loss. You don't even have to say that. You could just say something like, I'm going through something personal. I want you to be aware of that. I'll let you know if there's anything else I need from you. It's really simple, but it's a way to create trust, communication, openness, and actually to support you in your own confidence, and you're guiding those future conversations too, so that someone can listen to you to listen, not just listen to reply. The last principle here is identity. And I really love this quote from Jordan Dunn. She was a pregnant supermodel, and she actually was saying how much she owned the moment. There was so much judgment, but she was owning the moment when she was walking the runway. And she really felt that that moment was transformative, and it changed her need to be validated by others. So while that can be something where people are going, okay, supermodel on a runway, I think personally we all feel that weight of judgment, and how profound to be able to say that that's lifted off even when you're in a complete limelight and feeling the ability to be not needing to be validated by others, in fact, especially through the power of what you're doing as you become a mother. So just as I started, I will finish, which is you all are participating in this community, a community of support, because it's about you. And maybe this is so timely and so important for you as you navigate pregnancy and work, or thinking about it in the future. Or maybe you have a really dear friend or a colleague, a sister, a wife, but you want to help to navigate it for yourself or for others. And we all have a role to play. And in fact, it's very important that we're doing what we can do to reach back and pull others along with us, because that's how we flip the script on this very, very cultural constant. You can create a circle that includes mentors, mentees, allies, advocates, and they're all very different. So you want to make sure when you're thinking about who you want around you, you're very generous, but you're deliberate, and making sure that you're asking of those people. And by the way, you're doing it in return, what you need from them, but also within the scope of your entire network of the people around you. And remember, this isn't just about what you're doing before baby or thinking about getting pregnant, or even what you're doing during, but it's also giving visibility to the entire timeline of support. And last, I'm going to leave you with just one final quote. This quote from Megan Duggan, who's the president of the Women's Sports Foundation, and I just love, it helps to reset me. It helped me to reset even when I was writing the book and I was thinking about, oh my gosh, trying to do a great job at work and still be super present for my young children. But this book was really important to me. I was like, okay, I would read this quote and I would read some of the other stories and how powerful and generous the words were and kind. And this one is, the birth of our son and then our daughter make winning an Olympic gold medal look like an average Wednesday. And I feel like that's the moments of perspective, balance, community, communication, identity, all that really come together in a really special way. So to learn more, please, you can visit the website, Carry Strong Project. The book is available anywhere where books are sold. It's also an audiobook. The first page of it is my most favorite part of the book, which says pass it on. This book is meant to be shared with support. So you read it, you sign your name and pass it on. I know many of us pass on books, especially our breastfeeding books or our potty training books. So it can be a way that you also can connect with others and help to create that community. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Love that. Okay, let me spotlight myself. I thought it was so powerful, that stat that you had or you talked about interviewing that Olympian, and she said that she's never going to give 33%. You know,
Yes.
it's not like a pie, right? And it reminds me of a quote I recently read from the Sunda Duckett, who's the CEO of TIAA. And she said the whole notion of work-life balance is a disservice to women, because you're
Mm.
never able to give 100% at anything. And I think that whole notion of like, we have to be perfect at everything is has created such angst amongst working women, that we have to be superwoman. And she was like, sometimes as a mother, I'm giving it 30%, and at work it's 60, and sometimes it's the reverse. It's this whole notion of what she was saying is, though that 30% I am with my children, I am there 100%. And it's just the whole reframing of the notion of time. And it's funny because you had in your book also have this great quote: you can do it all, not at the same time and not alone. Talk more about that.
Sure. So for me, it's super important that there's three parts to it. And people often say you can do it all, not at the same time. And it makes sense, right? I don't think anyone is like, do it all. And that all is also individualized. So my all might be very different than what you have in mind is what doing it all is. And I think that's a really important piece also, that we all set ourselves up for the standards that we're trying to hold us to. But what do you want your all to be? For me, I actually am super fueled by having a lot of different things going on at the same time. It actually gives me energy and makes me feel, I don't know, more grounded, versus some people might actually feel more comfortable if they have that focus in a different moment. But then not at the same time. Okay. So even within that, there's going to be some things that are, going to need you more in a moment than in another, but you can't do it all at the same time. But the last part that's so important is the not alone. And I think that's the piece that we're finally starting to embrace. I think culturally, working mothers, et cetera, the okay that there are going to be people that are going to be able to help you in what you need to do at work, at home, in your life with your kids, then in fact might actually even do it better than you in some instances. And I think that is very freeing too, that community. And by the way, the sharing of that, instead of feeling like you had to also have this perception that you are doing it all at the same time and not alone and alone. My son and I, when we were talking about this, who's 9, we're talking about it like in canto, like Luisa, with like holding everything up and that feeling like how am I going to keep doing all this? And you can do it in a moment, but doing it all the time is exhausting. And then you're also not demonstrating to those around you that you care about them and that you care about their individual self-care.
Sorry. Um, that is so powerful. I mean, just it's I wish someone told that to me earlier in my career. um, that you don't have to be everything to everyone, right? And I love that analogy from Encanto, of just that pressure that
Yeah.
I think so many working mothers feel that today.
And you need to release it. And there needs to be a moment. And by the way, it's something that, sometimes people say to me, but you're doing it to yourself. And it's like, yeah, I think we get a lot of joy from that. We get joy from succeeding at work and taking care of our family and also trying to take care of ourselves. But the sustainability of that is not necessarily going to work. And I really, really am thoughtful of this with my kids or with my teammates. I would never say, you know what, you need to really be doing a great job at all of these things exactly at the same time. Like sometimes playing back the things that we do ourselves to others, like, oh my goodness, there's no way that we would ever say that to our friend or our children. And that's been really helpful for me too. And recognize when you need that pause, even if it's a brief one, but what can you take off the plate? When you're feeling good and you're engaged and you're feeling healthy and strong, sure, you can take on that whole list of 10 things. Maybe you don't want to, and you have to be deliberate with your choices, but also recognize those moments where it's all right, it's only going to be these 3 things in this moment, this day, this season, and what really matters. And that can also be really helpful. And in fact, you're setting a great example for everyone around you that is much more achievable and and appropriate than this incredible amount of pressure we feel like we have to shoulder.
Yeah. You have some really great statistics in the book, and you mentioned some of the research highlighted that motherhood can significantly impact a woman's career.
Mm.
How can women proactively, and maybe the men who love them, or whoever, may address the impact and ensure a positive outcome for their professional lives?
Well, I think that's actually a really important point, is that regardless of gender, it's going to have an impact on your career. And what do you want that impact to be? And in fact, it can be very different in different seasons of also your children's lives. It might be different for pregnancy for the birthing person. It might be different within the first year or a few years, for couples of all genders. But what do you want it to be? And you need to reassess it over and over again. I have several friends that, in the moment, it's, I have to shift, and this is what I want, and this is what's important to me, but perhaps then are going to shift to a different type of work going forward. Or others who are, it's still important for me to maintain my focus in the same role that I have, but I need to discuss with my team around me, maybe the projects or the workload, et cetera, that I have in this particular moment, or how available do I want to be? What type of support do I need from my partner? Or what type of support do I need in my community from my other extended family members? And I think thinking through that over time with checkpoints, instead of feeling like you have to get it all perfect, is not going to work. But instead, break it down into pieces with checkpoints based off of how you're feeling, how work is going. When we do assessments at work, we're not just doing it once a year. You're trying to do it every few months, where you're checking in with yourself over time. But draw some lines. Often I have found with new mothers, it's really helpful to think about it throughout those phases of pregnancy, but also with the development of your child and even sleep. It's going to change, especially in that first year.
Love that. So we have a question in the live stream. So as a mother of two and as a seasoned professional, you have a very demanding job as a chief people officer at L'Oreal. How do you personally manage the juggling of your career and your family life? Are there any lessons or experiences that you can share?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So it's interesting. It's one of those things I always like to very humbly say. It's often my advice that I give, but what I need to really practice for myself. And even this morning, I was actually doing a presentation at L'Oreal for our new employees, and I always have a word of the year. And this year, 2023's word of the year has been deliberate. And I even talk about it when I'm talking about the book. Being deliberate with your community, being deliberate with your time. And when I find that I'm not doing that, then I slip and I take on too much. And so I have to really check myself with that. But the word for 2024 is looking like it might be something like ease. I need to find, when I'm getting to the level of it's too much, things that can't be outsourced or things that I don't want to, or even for myself, when I feel that my sleep isn't where it should be, or I'm not eating healthier. I love to run. And if I feel like when I'm running, I'm not feeling the same way, I have to pause. You have to recognize that. And trying to recognize that before you're already past that point, I think is something that I've worked really hard and focusing on. So when I have a lot of travel back to back, or I have a lot of different things going on for the kids, for work, for the book, for school, all of the stuff at the same time, I have to build in those moments of respite. I almost try to recognize when I think it could be too much and know when to take some things off the plate. Because then when I get there, it's not like, oh my gosh, I dropped the ball. In fact, I look forward to it, and actually gives me a little breathing room to reassess. And you can always add back, but it's much harder when you feel like you constantly have to, hold up all of those things at the same time.
Yeah. It reminds me, I used to have this amazing EA, and I would go to back meetings, and she would, without me asking, just place lunch,
Right.
walk, break between meetings, and she would
Yeah.
proactively do that. And I think we forget to sometimes do that for ourselves. And sometimes we need people who care for us to do that for us. But I think also the intentionality is so important, because, and I always think of Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets done, right?
Yeah.
And intentionality is really about, this is important to me. This is what matters most. I need to make time for it, because it reminds me of my days as an executive. And I said family was the most important thing to me, but I barely saw my daughter from Monday to Friday because I was commuting, and I got home 10 o'clock at night. And so there was a discrepancy between what mattered most to me and how I was actually living my life. And if you're not intentional, and if you don't have that measure of what success is, then you're basically going to be controlled by other people's
Right.
calendar invite and whims.
Right.
Another question we have from Zoom. In your experience, sorry, in YouTube, in your experience, what can organizations do to better support and accommodate pregnant employees? Really good question.
Yeah.
Ensuring a more positive impact on their careers.
So that's a great question and so important. And I think one of the things I often like to say is that that idea of what you should be thinking about or what you should consider for yourself from before, during, and after pregnancy is also really important for employers and for places of work. And instead of, by the way, waiting until someone is digging through your company website to try to find your maternity policy, putting it out there in advance from the very beginning stages. Because in fact, whether or not someone will actually need a fertility benefit or even have a leave for parents, regardless of gender or regardless of the way that they become a parent, which I believe is very important, you still need to make sure it's visible. And in fact, that's also going to give other people, maybe not related to pregnancy, but that idea that they should be asking also what could be important for them, but knowing also their colleagues are supported in that way. So I think that's the first thing is sharing those type of resources. But again, breaking it down into what could be helpful pre, what could be helpful during onboarding, offboarding, health benefits, tools, for example, like Maven, which is a great resource where you can actually have private access of healthcare on demand to employees or for individuals, but also afterwards. If you're a place of work that has a parents think tank or ERG, a resource group for employees, don't just wait until after someone has a child for 2 years. If you talk about it before and you share that with more people, engage them as an ally, or even just make sure it's positive and you're welcome, you're doing that beforehand. You're helping to take people along the journey with you. Wellness resources, breastfeeding rooms and spaces. Don't bury them. Don't hide them. Make them visible. Make sure that anyone can see where they are. So even if it's not for me, and that's not, I have my children are in my past. I'm not going to need that room anymore, but I like to know where it is so I can be a system of support to someone else at work where I can say, oh yeah, that's right there. That's great. What else can I do to help you?
I love that. I have another question, but I just wanted to see if does anyone in the Zoom audience have a question? I know I've kind of asked some of the ones on the live stream. Does anyone in the Zoom audience want to ask a question? If not, I'll ask my next one. No? Okay. So the question I have here is, Carrie Strong really encouraged a shift in narrative around working motherhood, from enduring it, surviving, to celebrating it. So could you share some success stories or examples of women who have successfully embraced this mindset and like how we can kind of learn from it?
Yeah, it was a really, really important and deliberate part of writing the book because I recognized that the narrative that people were feeling often felt like headlines, like in real headlines that said pregnancy is a career killer. Well, if you're telling someone that, of course you're going to feel like you're up against something. Or even when someone is suffering a loss or becomes pregnant publicly or a public figure, it's always framed as this like triumph. It is, but it's also something that happens to a lot of people. So there's a balance between the thriving and the surviving and a lot of the things that are in between. And I just wanted to make sure people could feel that all three were possible at different moments throughout your pregnancy, which was very key in the narrative. But for some that were successful, there are several places in the book where I actually talk about something. I talk about a stoplight, like assessing your career and how you're feeling in a stoplight. So if you're in the zone and you're feeling really good, you're green, right? You're in a green traffic light situation and you're feeling great about navigating your career. Maybe you're getting a lot of energy from work. Maybe you're on a new project, you have a great team, or you've started something on your own. It's just a great season. Anyway, there's a lot of great reasons for you to feel that green. And actually, pregnant women can get really afraid. What am I going to lose? I'm going to lose this green energy space that I have. But actually recognizing the why can help that carry throughout your pregnancy and even upon your return or even post baby. So that's kind of one thing. Then if it's yellow, there's a moment of hesitation. It's kind of like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Is it about your place of work? Is it about the type of work? Is it about the people you're with? Is it something about you? Is it something else in your life going on besides just work and life, which gives a lot of credit to work and not enough credit to life? Or are you red? And if you're red, it's get me out of here. And in fact, there's some stories in the book about women who recognized that red feeling, but actually used it as a moment to decide, did they want to push through? Did they want to stay where they were because of the support they had or benefits, et cetera? Did they want to pause? Did they want to slow something down? Or did they want to pivot their career altogether? And actually assessing yourself in that way, it's not just about pregnancy work, it could be any time, but it actually helps to have those checkpoints. And there's some people in the book that they used it to fully change, fully pivot what was happening. And maybe for them, that was exactly what they needed to actually feel good health-wise, for the next phase of their career, but also for their family and their future. And even from a financial component, sometimes people were making a push in that moment that actually set them up better for success with their family coming afterwards, after their pregnancy. But there are a few of those type of stories that are in the book where I think often the fear of what could happen is now becoming something where it's an opportunity and it's a challenge that you can have. Places of work are more so putting out what they're offering, and it's a matching between what employees or individuals want for that life, for that season of their life, and what companies are offering. So take stock of where you are, decide if it's the right moment for you, but there are definitely places where you can engage your purpose even more, but also set yourself up and your family up for success, even if sometimes it doesn't feel like it's the right moment for making a move.
So do you want time for one more question?
Sure, one more.
I have a question from an anonymous. Navigating pregnancy and work involves a balance between privacy and support. How can women strike this balance effectively in the workforce?
First of all, I completely agree. It is absolutely a balance between privacy and support. And I found that with speaking to so many women. And that's why within the book, I'm very careful with the advice that I give, because advice that I give for you might be very different if I'm a very private person, actually. So when I was pregnant, I waited way too long to share my news, but I had suffered multiple losses and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that emotionally, physically. I also had my secret kind of community of support. But what I could have done that would have been really helpful, I could have done the example is what I said when I was sharing a little bit in the talk of, I'm going through something. I'm not really ready to share what that is, but I just want you to be aware. And maybe that I would have felt less pressure to overperform at work in that moment when I was dealing with so much, just a little bit. I didn't need to say, well, actually, I've been suffering multiple losses and I'm miserable. And I didn't need to do that. But for other people, it also might be better to advocate for yourself in that moment to say, listen, I'm going through IVF. I need these appointments. This is priority for me. And the relationship that you have is allowing it. But that private and public piece, use that who. Who do you need to tell? What do you need to tell? And use it with how you're feeling in that moment, but to still accomplish what you need, which is the most important, which is about your health and the health of your baby.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming today. This was so powerful for everyone who's watching this via live stream on YouTube or LinkedIn or X. Go get the book today. It's out in the bookstores. I also kind of in the emails, and I'll put it in all of the different chats, the website. What is the website once again?
carrystrongproject.com. And it can be helpful because if you want to have some support for how to tell my boss I'm pregnant, there's a downloadable resource. If you want to talk about the phases, that's something that's interesting to you, that's there. There's some podcast resources and of course how to find the book. But I really was inspired in writing the book that personally, I was digging through message board threads. There weren't conversations like this happening, and I don't want women to have to do that. So I just want it to be available and make sure the conversation can happen.
Wish this book was out when I was pregnant, but now that it's out, I am going to be gifting it to all of my friends who are soon to be. Once again, thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for inspiring so many. And go get the book and make sure you review it.